So everybody hates The Last Airbender. Everybody knows it sucks, so what's left to talk about? Well, it's like an Escher drawing. Everything that's wrong about it is what makes it interesting. I've never seen such a perfect storm of getting everything wrong in a film. It doesn't even need a review, just any 10 seconds from the movie.
I did everything Dad said to do. I watched what side of the fin tracks are more indented, that shows you which direction they're going. I saw how long the drag skids are, that shows you how fast they're going.
Yeah. What I like about The Last Airbender as a case study, and it is a case study, is what happens when you take the rough elements of an idea and find two different outcomes. I'll be honest, I'm a fan of the show, but I do believe good adaptations are possible, and two mediums can suit a story. But even great adaptations can have differences between creators.
He had this rather bizarre scene where I think Flitwick was conducting, and there was this, there were miniature people in an orchestra inside something. And I just, you see, this is my geekiness. I said to him, but why? And I know it's intriguing to go through the mouth of whatever it was and see these little people, but why have they done it? For you to film it, that's just what it feels like.
Most people, including me, were upset because The Last Airbender was one of the worst adaptations. I mean, the movie's bad enough on its own, but if I make comparisons to the show, it's because there's an inherent flaw, and looking to the show can provide a better example. So, you want to adapt Avatar: The Last Airbender. Not a bad idea. It makes more sense than, like, The Cat in the Hat. The show is successful, there's plenty of world-building material, and it was guaranteed to make money because of the associated name. But right from the start, it seemed like everything was done wrong. The creators, Brian Konietzko and Michael DiMartino, were mostly ignored in the process.
We gave, like, input that went nowhere.
Yeah, sure.
So, it's like we were involved, but our involvement had no effect.
Also, adaptations are common, but not from an existing motion picture format. The fundamental flaw is that the show already exists visually. You can adapt books, plays, and comics, but with a TV show, there's no room for adjustment. Either it's wrong, or it's a replica. There's simply a difference between animation and live action, but I get the feeling that that's derogatory. Like Avatar needs a live action movie to be taken seriously. Animation has a stigma. I get it. It's usually aimed at children because it can be bright and colorful, but it can just as easily be dark and depressing.
Don't worry, it's just animation. It has no real effect on people.
There's a recent trend of remaking classic animated films in live action. Disney is shelling out remakes left and right, and anime is being recreated for the big screen. But they're missing aesthetic. Animation looks a certain way, and it makes you feel a certain way. It has style and exaggeration. If you study animation, the point of it is communication. Simple lines lead to clarity. This is why rotoscope animation is less successful, even if it looks incredible. Animators can manipulate timing by adding or subtracting frames, and this can lead to faster action scenes. Live action is just real life. Let's look at Beauty and the Beast. Belle and the Beast are created in the same method. Lines on paper and then cel shaded. The style forces you to look at all of these characters through the same tinted lenses. Everything lines up consistently and it feels believable. The live action Beast feels a little bit awkward, but more importantly the characters lack a certain chemistry because the creation of these characters involve different methods. And you can see the same contrast in 2D animation when 3D is added in, though it's more cohesive. In Avatar, the animation serves the incredible world building. Bending looks fluid and natural. Action is heightened and graceful. The comedy is exaggerated. Everything is blanketed in style. When it comes to real life, it can look flat.
Trying to eat me.
I'd argue any adaptation from animation to live action is just going to feel different. But they made the movie anyway. A studio hired a man to take an intellectual property he didn't understand away from two creative artists who made something beloved by millions. And it was made before the third season was out.
So you've seen the first 2 episodes of season 3. Are you excited for the rest of the season and the finale of Avatar?
Really hope he didn't miss any important setups. Right. Now, I like Shyamalan probably more than most people.
How do you know for sure? I mean, a lot of things are made up. Superman ain't real. Neither's Indiana Jones. What if someone just made him up?
M. Night is a great story guy. He's the guy you go to when you need a wouldn't it be neat if idea. I think Shyamalan is a better director than he is a writer.
Jay, what health-conscious fast food purveyor did you originally solicit to buy these chicken wings you've so lovingly reheated in a minor suicidal gesture?
Hooters, and you can't just throw them out, Dr. Fletcher.
Oh, this is wrong on so many levels.
Except every line in The Last Airbender is bad.
Then we can think about the pretty girls.
I sympathize with him. He had to condense the entire first season of a TV show into a concise movie.
Inevitably, you had to depart from the strict storyline of the books. The books are simply too long to make into very faithful films.
Not everything can be included. That's understandable. The problem is, the details he included are convoluted and unexplained. There's such a bizarre way the movie doles out information. It's hard to say what it is and why it sucks. Partly it feels like information is out of order.
Ong flew us to his home. He told us how he left there in a storm on Appa.
Katara narrates about Ong, but doesn't ask his name until after that.
Is it okay if you tell me your name?
The monks named me Ong.
And this is 18 minutes into the movie. He should have said his name in this scene. This is just the basics. The Avatar universe is big. It needs careful explanation, but not such an emphasis on world building that it loses the great characters or the humor. Every line is expositional.
They haven't been able to conquer big cities like Ba Sing Se.
Force.
The Avatar would have to be an airbender. Are you an airbender, boy?
Or narrated.
My brother and I often go hunting for food, but unfortunately my brother isn't the best hunter in the world.
The Last Airbender fast forwards through natural character interactions.
My brother and the princess became friends right away.
But expects us to care about the consequences. We're not watching the movie to get the spark notes, we want to watch what's happening. The show uses flashbacks to enhance the narrative visually. Screenwriting 101. Show, don't tell. If you get so wrapped up in how this works and that works, but you skip over basic emotions like love, then what's the point? The exposition is also disposable. The opening title sequence doesn't even say that the Fire Nation invaded everyone. The film lacks genuine setups and payoffs, which shouldn't exist from a seasoned screenwriter. Let's look at Harry Potter. They take the time to show scenes in classrooms. Book fans will know that there are a lot of classroom scenes, but the writer narrowed them down to a select few. But each of these has a point.
Wingardium Leviosa. Off you go then.
They use that spell later when they fight the troll.
A werewolf has no choice. With each full moon, when he transforms, he no longer remembers who he is. He'd kill his best friend if he crossed his path.
Turns out, there's a werewolf at the end of the movie, and this scene sets up a premonition that eventually comes true. Setups and payoffs. When do they ever deal with Sokka and Katara losing their parents? Besides a future movie, why does Zhao keep yammering on about the library?
You know, I conducted a raid on the Great Library, which most said didn't even exist.
In my raid of the Great Library earlier this year.
This is a scroll from the Great Library.
Doesn't it make more sense for Avatar Roku to give wisdom to Aang as a part of his past life, rather than a dragon for no reason? And if you think that's too much to fit into a movie, then don't limit yourself to 1 hour and 35 minutes. They reach the final location of the movie after less than an hour. Just breathe. The studio did cut out scenes so that it could be converted to 3D faster, but I've seen the deleted scenes.
If the Fire Nation were to conquer the Northern Water Tribe city, they would be too powerful to overcome.
And they don't help. Now it's time to cast the movie.
And to watch it be dragged through the mud and the whole racial side of things was just so disheartening.
It begs the question, what race are anime characters?
The thing about anime is that it's an art form that includes culturally ambiguous features. And it's meant to see yourself in it. That's the art form. And so all cultures see themselves in those faces.
Oh. Visually, some may argue they're white because of the big eyes and the fair skin. But the real answer is in culture and context. In Asian countries, anime characters aren't perceived as white. And trust me, Japanese creators distinguish between Eastern characters and Western characters, even in fantasy worlds. Because we can't divorce our world from fantasy. Miyazaki does this in Howl's Moving Castle. The influence in culture is quite different. Look at the English signs, the European architecture, and think about the names. Her name is Sophie versus Chihiro or Ashitaka. The same can be said of Full Metal Alchemist. The main setting takes place in the fictional Amestris, and the main characters are Edward and Alphonse Elric. The neighboring country is Xing, with characters named Ling, Lanfan, and Fu. That says volumes. So with characters like Aang, Katara, and Zuko, and cultures that are influenced from our own world, Japanese, Chinese, Inuit, and Tibetan, not only is it insensitive to cast white people as the heroes and Indians or Middle Eastern people as the villains, but it shows a complete ignorance about the project. It's embarrassing to have our leads look like this, when the extras look completely authentic. I don't think the casting for the Full Metal Alchemist movie is true to the character either, but it's a Japanese film for a Japanese audience. America is hard. It's a melting pot of different races, and representing everyone is impossible. But unfortunately, white is the race they use to appeal to everyone. And you can come up with any excuse to cast a white lead. Motoko Kusanagi, she's an android. She can be any race. Goku-san. He's an alien. He can be any race. Light Yagami. It's now set in America, so he can be any race. Except any race continues to be white, and Hollywood will use any loophole to stay in this bland, risk-free pattern as long as it makes money. Okay, finding great child actors is difficult, but it's been done before, especially by M. Night Shyamalan. I find it hard to believe that out of all the young actors in the world that they chose someone with no acting experience.
There's no one on the planet that's more like Han. These are not coincidences.
Which doesn't mean that they can't find unknowns, but they chose Noah Ringer based solely on his taekwondo skills. The movie industry has an entire department devoted to making actors look like they're performing impossible actions on screen. It's called the stunt department. I feel like it's very obvious, but actors have to be able to act. And yes, even kids can get stunt doubles. You can use women, petite bodies, and kids. Nia Murphy performed the stunts for Laura in Logan. But you still need an actress to speak with emotion.
Fucking talk to me this whole time.
Si ni me miras, me intentas dejar tirada, me gritas, ni me hablas, me insultas. ¿Tú qué crees? ¿Que voy a hablar contigo?
Shut the fuck up!
And most importantly, not make you cringe through the whole film.
It's time for you to stop doing this!
Or you can go the Keanu Reeves route, who's a decent actor but can be trained to look like an action star. He spent years perfecting the moves for The Matrix, and look what he can do as John Wick. Noah Ringer can spin a staff, and that's it. He looks like Aang, he sounds like Aang, but he's not a convincing actor.
I didn't bow back.
One mistake by novice actors is the tendency to over-enunciate, either with their voice or their gestures.
Monet, I'm back! Hey guys, I want you to meet someone.
The worst of this is Nicola Peltz playing Katara.
We found that boy. He's our responsibility. We should fight.
She just looks so stupid. I don't know. I have nothing clever to say about her acting other than it's bad and she looks embarrassing. And she looks like she's on the verge of tears at all times.
Well, that's just silly. I don't sound like that.
Oh man, this writer's a genius!
If Shyamalan made this movie because his daughter wanted to be Katara for Halloween...
For Halloween, she wanted to be Katara.
Why wouldn't he cast an Indian actress? How masochistic do you have to be? Those girls look like Katara. At least he looks like Sokka? But Jackson Rathbone is an atrocious actor.
Okay, so what if we found you teachers to teach you bending? Which element would you have to learn first?
Besides eternally sounding like he's juggling water in his mouth,
a young man with kind of a warrior's heart.
He just pouts through the whole movie like Anakin Skywalker. Sokka is a funny comic relief character. When the leads have to deal with drama, we need a lighthearted sidekick to relieve the tension. The show perfected this, even giving him insecurities. I mean, they tried.
Katara!
This is pathetic! My jokes are way funnier than this!
This is the most disappointing aspect of casting. Considering it was going to be Jesse McCartney, it could have been worse. Dev Patel is a good actor, he's just not a good Zuko. The heroes are allowed to be these naive little twits, but Zuko is a rich, complicated character that had to be nailed with precision. First, I assume casting Dev Patel set the precedent of the Fire Nation being Indian or Middle Eastern. The Fire Nation emulates the ancient Japanese, and this is represented visually through the top knots, the clothing, the architecture, and thematically through Japan's history of industrialization while retaining traditional culture. The symbol of the sun is like the symbol of fire. None of this is South Asian, and this is important because of Zuko's obsession with honor and shame. Honor and Bushido are so ingrained in their culture that applying it to a completely separate culture is misguided. What Dev Patel lacks is intimidation and hostility.
I am Prince Zuko, son of Fire Lord Ozai and heir to the throne.
He portrays depression, but even that feels ham-handed. Zuko is a firestorm waiting to happen.
I don't need any calming tea! I need to capture the Avatar!
With vulnerability and humanity underneath. We're also missing two of the biggest visual representations of the character, the top knot and the scar. I mentioned the top knot as a misplacement of culture, but his hair narratively shows his evolution as a character. He starts with a top knot because he's obsessed with honor, and when he cuts it, it's to leave that behind. Then his hair grows and changes to suit his mood throughout the series. It's a perfect visual gesture without saying anything. And technically, yes, he has a scar, but it's so barely visible it's insulting. You could define Zuko by his scar. This is pathetic, honestly. It doesn't drive this character, it doesn't suggest his past, it should engulf his face. By not doing that, you've diminished all of Zuko's character motivations and his redemption arc. Dev Patel should have played Sokka, because he's a great comedic actor.
You get it!
Hello, Mr. Stoneham.
You know, I always had a European sensibility to my movies, so the pacing is always a little bit off for them, you know, and it feels a little stilted, and they need more electricity and all that stuff. And I'm like, this is the way I think of things, because, you know, Hitchcock and Kurosawa and Stanley Kubrick, these are like my teachers.
If you look back at Shyamalan's earlier work, I actually see what he's talking about. He likes long takes, moody lighting, different types of angles and Hitchcock influences. But it was natural to the story he was telling. I hate to break it to you, Godard, but The Last Airbender is not French New Wave. There are no 10-minute conversations about whatever anywhere in this film.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 et demi, 7, 3 quarts. Tu es tellement large que je parie que tu vas sourire.
I'd be hard-pressed to find 1-minute conversations. The idea that Shyamalan made an unconventional action film with European sensibilities is delusional. In fact, every department that worked on this movie made amazing work before. What was the perfect storm that killed these professionals? Take the cinematography, for instance. One of the reasons The Last Airbender is so unintentionally funny is its flatness. The visuals in the animated show are comparable to the greatest films of all time. The Fire Lord is menacing. This is a chance to do something beyond fantasy. Something with atmosphere.
They told me that you had gone totally insane.
But in the film, he's just there, without a hint of ferocity. There's no mood, no interesting lighting, not even an imposing score. Zhao is the same way, a volatile general reduced to a schmuck.
Let's offer him lunch.
These are the bad guys, and you don't get the sense that this powerful nation invaded everyone and wages war with the world. The big change from the show prevents firebenders from producing their own fire. Shyamalan said he wanted to level the playing field, because every other bender had to have their element available. Otherwise, it was unfair. That is the point. There's a reason the Fire Nation invaded everyone. It's thematic too. Fire consumes. The Water Tribe didn't invade the world, the Fire Nation did. Leveling the playing field... it levels the playing field. Other than looking lame in comparison to the show, it's a detriment to the movie. They don't feel like they could engulf a room in fire at any second. They definitely can't shoot lightning. There's just nothing creative with the elements. I'm astonished they didn't use Sifu Kisu to get the moves exactly like the ones they used in the show.
It's a very strong, dynamic style that uses powerful hand and leg movements.
Action, reaction. When the martial arts are met with a delayed element, it takes all of the energy out of an action sequence. Pretty odd that a movie that was unconcerned with characters didn't even give us good action.
The breath becomes energy in the body. The energy extends past your limbs and becomes fire. Get it right this time.
For me, what really ruins the film is the skewed sense of timing. Editing is hard. Bad editing can make or break a performance. Everyone likes a long take, right? Shyamalan does. Except when you're capturing everything wrong and you can't edit around it. See, this is the detriment of a long take. If you just point your camera at a subpar actor, without clear camera movement, you're left with a badly timed shot.
We move from town to town in the Earth Kingdom. We try to stay out of sight, but Sokka became concerned we were being followed.
But even the shot reverse shots are smashed together.
Why are you doing this? Who are you?
I've taken a few examples of jarring cuts and edited them to feel more natural.
What's your name? How did you get here? How did you get in the ice? He's exhausted.
So what's off about the scene? Katara interrogates Aang with a series of questions and ultimately decides that he's too tired to answer. But she doesn't give him a chance. Now watch the scene with just a little more breathing room.
What's your name? How did you get here? How did you get in the ice? He's exhausted. We need to get him back to the village.
Next scene.
Thanks for bringing Appa to me. The Fire Nation is up to something. I have to go back now.
We'll come with you.
I could take you back to the village.
We're going with you.
So, let's see the re-edit.
Thanks for bringing Appa to me. The Fire Nation is up to something. I have to go back now.
We're going with you.
And lastly, Zuko gives Aang a dangerous ultimatum.
I'm taking you to my ship. If you don't come, I'll burn down this village.
I'll go with you. Don't hurt anyone.
This is a pivotal point where the hero is captured, even though we don't know anything about him yet. This is where our protagonist and antagonist meet, and Aang shows his good nature by sacrificing himself to save others. But he makes that decision in a split second, and the audience can't feel the tension or the pressure of that decision. And added at the end for no reason. So instead, let's not indicate a threat in dialogue, but let's actually show it.
I'm taking you to my ship. If you don't come, I'll burn down this village.
I'll go with you. Don't hurt anyone.
Much better, right? Ultimately, I feel like M. Night Shyamalan didn't understand what he was making. In an attempt to make a children-friendly martial arts film, he was completely out of his element. That doesn't make him a bad person, and I think he gets a lot of blame because he wrote, directed, and produced it. But so many departments work on a movie, and oddly enough, all of them drop the ball. Still, it's hard not to feel frustrated at Shyamalan for making unnecessary changes.
Aang's name is like, well, then why is he white? I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't try to pronounce his name more ethnically correct and then put him ethnically totally not correct.
There's a reason they made The Last Airbender and not a wholly original kung fu film. It was banking off of the show's popularity. Why make it if you don't care? But beyond that, he didn't understand the world entirely either.
Why can't the Avatar have a family?
I asked that. They said that's a sacrifice the Avatar always has to make.
That's just not true. Avatar Roku was married, and Aang made his own family.
Each of these creatures is a spirit. They have watched over us since the beginning. They have guided us. And only the Avatar can go speak to them.
Nope.
Let's hope, for your sake, my son doesn't find this person first and he turns out to be the Avatar. He would return as a hero and for all purposes be your superior.
Shyamalan seems to have taken the Fire Lord's deal literally. Ozai never intended to embrace his son or restore his honor, because his plan was to punish him through cruelty, neglect, and callousness.
Why would he banish you if he didn't care?
Maybe it's a way of manipulating Zhao to work harder, but the line is read with such sincerity that it doesn't come across that way. So it further reveals a misinterpretation about the abusive relationship between Zuko and his father.
How can you possibly justify a duel with a child?
It was to teach you respect.
It was cruel, and it was wrong.
Then you've learned nothing.
No, I've learned everything.
As the Avatar, you are not meant to hurt others.
This is also a comprehensible blunder. One, because it contradicts the show, when many episodes, in fact a quite substantial arc, deals with Aang debating whether to kill the Fire Lord or not.
I've always tried to solve my problems by being quick or clever, and I've only had to use violence for necessary defense. And I've certainly never used it to take a life.
And previous avatars have different opinions on that. This is so well handled and nuanced within a kids show, to discuss whether saving many lives is worth taking one. And ultimately, the show moves beyond that by finding a better solution, which is to take someone's power away, in this case literally. In The Last Airbender, Aang receives this vague information without earning it or learning it for himself. It also doesn't make any sense within context. The dragon says,
"Use the ocean. Show them the power of water."
What was Aang confused about? If you want to defeat the Fire Nation, then fight them. Also, don't pretend your massive tsunami didn't kill anyone. But if you really listen to the wishy-washy advice dished out through the movie,
water teaches us acceptance.
The power of water would probably imply surrender. And that's kind of the point, isn't it? The Last Airbender takes pieces of the show and shuffles them around to fit a movie-length format, while abandoning the original context, or failing to provide its own context.
There's Earth right beneath your feet.
Many of these misconceptions are corrected in The Legend of Korra, which feels like a healthy recovery after a trauma. Brian Konietzko and Michael DiMartino reclaimed the world of Avatar.
But yeah, it definitely, I think that experience gave us a little extra, like, motivation to write Korra ourselves and just say, like, you know what, we're gonna do this right.
And despite a bad movie, nothing changes. It's their creation. They made something unique that spans over 7 seasons, with a world full of detail, characters full of life and realism, extraordinary animation and artwork, and a beautiful score. So, are there any positives to The Last Airbender? Well, the story at least has a clear protagonist who has an arc. I like this shot, and I like this shot. And that's about it. And let's be honest, this movie is fun to hate. It's never boring because there's always something awful to keep you interested. And we're all rubbernecking to the finish line. We enjoy hating it, at least I do. The Last Airbender will endure as this terrible, awkward artifact that I love to hate.